Welcome to the Village Vision podcast, where community, collaboration, and care converge. I'm Dr. Crystal Morrison, and I'm honored to be your host on this incredible journey. As a firm believer in the power of a united village, I'm thrilled to bring you inspiring stories, research, and projects that break down barriers in child and family care. Through heartfelt conversations with experts, advocates, and those with lived experiences, we'll showcase the transformative impact of collective support. So join me on the Village Vision podcast as we explore the remarkable collaborations that lead to better outcomes, foster a sense of community, and inspire action to improve care for ourselves and everyone around us. On today's episode, I'm here with my friend Tessa Watkins. Tessa is an autistic programmer that loves using technology to find solutions. Tessa is also the founder of AuRise Creative, where they focus on helping startups and small businesses grow. Tessa is also the creator of Just1Voice, an amazing resource focused on autism, gender and sex topics, anti-racism, parenting, and advocacy. Welcome. But as with everybody that's on the Village Vision podcast, there's always a big why behind the things that we're doing. So can you talk a little bit more about your personal story with us and what led you to create AuRise Creative and Just1Voice?
Well, I think, let's see, how far back to go is always the question. Like, start from when I was a baby, which trauma, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The why. I think in pictures, not in words. So I'm like trying to translate them into words.
Yeah.
I think in general, I just want to help. It's like where if you need a website but you don't know where to start, like I can help you and I can guide you, and I'll make it budget friendly and not upsell you on those crazy things where it's just like ridiculously expensive. Like
Yeah.
Very
expensive.
So it like, because you could be paying like so much money just for a website, How to Adult.
Yeah.
So someone had suggested the book, The Rosie Project.
Yeah.
By Graham Simpson, I think his name is pronounced. And the Rosie Project is about an autistic adult. He is a geneticist, in the field, and it's a love story, and there's definitely some stereotypes in there.
Sure.
But when I was reading the book, I'm like, wow, like this guy's so cool. And it does say outright that he's autistic. So it's not like, so I ended up joining like so many Facebook groups. I joined TikTok for the first time and was just kind of immersing myself in groups that were for autistic people.
Right.
Because that's the boat that I was going in. At the time I had an infant, so I wasn't even concerned about their well-being and whether or not they were autistic. It was all about me. So like I didn't even think about joining groups for parents of autistic people. It was just groups for autistic adults. So eventually I remember the night before, I was just scrolling around on TikTok, or not on TikTok, on Facebook, and there was like this meme that came up, and it said, if you think you're trying to trick yourself into believing you're autistic, stop that right now. I'm like, what do you mean non-autistic people don't do that? Does not everyone have this identity crisis of whether or not they're autistic? So then I turned to my husband and I just showed him the picture. I said, is this true? And he just kind of looked at me like, duh, like I don't think I'm autistic. There's no reason why I think I'm autistic. There's nothing that would indicate that. And I'm like, huh.
Hmm.
And then, of course, I then followed it up with taking like 3 or 4 of those online tests to make
Yeah.
sure that it still scored. Because like I was consistently taking these tests to make sure that I
Yeah.
still scored in the autism range. Because the minute I wouldn't, I'd be like, okay, let's cancel the appointment.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
needed that validation all the way through.
Hmm.
And then the morning of the appointment, I had such a panic attack. I
Yeah.
was wearing a Fitbit at the time, and for the 2 hours leading up to my appointment, it said I was in the fat burning zone. So with Just1Voice, it first started off being where I just created a Facebook page so that I could essentially just, publish out thoughts and mingle with other autistic pages and just kind of find community and some education and spreading that information. And then when there were a lot of well, it's actually a Facebook group, not a page, but yeah, but then there was like a need for people always like, well, I want to share this outside the group. I know so and so that one
Hmm.
that would benefit from this information. It was a private group, and not everyone likes Facebook, so
Yeah.
I would, usually give them permission, like, yeah, go ahead and screenshot that, take it out of the group, show it to your partner, like that's great, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then there were other resources. It's not super fleshed out, but
Hmm.
I'm working on essentially amplifying other voices and bringing that content in. So,
Hmm.
like the first video on there was by Anna Akana on, oh, it was one of my favorite videos on it because it had so many nuances of stuff that I had never even heard about, like
Hmm.
blackfishing. Like, didn't know that was a thing, but now I do. And
Hmm.
it talked about like covert racism. Like, I have some Italian cousins, and they would be like, "Look how dark I am," because they would get really dark in the
Yeah.
summer, and I didn't tan at all. I just went straight to burning, and I'm realizing now how problematic that kind of conversations are when you're like, be like, "Oh, look, I'm almost as dark as you." Ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
No, let's not do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of resources that I tend to reshare on social media, I would
Hmm.
put it on my Facebook page or on my website, be like, let's just reshare it here. So I think one of the things that I would want other parents to know about their autistic child is that advocacy doesn't start when they start school. It
That's
starts when they're
great.
born. Um, so, and we do so much um, about trying to change the child to fit into our world. And I am the complete opposite. I'm out here trying to change the world to fit my child,
Hmm.
which is why I am, talking with school boards and
Dysregulation, sensory challenges. And once we started incorporating some sign language techniques at home and at his preschool, there were some things that subsided a little bit because
Mhm.
he finally had, I mean, he was verbal, but being verbal doesn't necessarily mean that you can identify all of the stuff that's going on in
Yeah,
your body,
yeah.
and it did really help. I love that you tried that too and still use it sometimes.
Oh yeah, it's because even though because like my daughter, she's also very highly verbal. She will
Hmm.
talk your ear off.
Yeah.
That she gets that trait from my husband.
Hmm.
And but sometimes when she's really anxious, so if you go to the website on the homepage, you'll see that there is essentially like those 4 categories: the autism, gender and sex, anti-racism, parenting. Um, and under the autism section, there's like all of this cool stuff. So I've got like my big resources hub. That's the
Hmm.
number one thing. That's where I share around all of the Facebook groups that I'm in, where it's like, and that has the table of contents. So like the first section of that is about supporting autism, and that has a lot of our community advocacy points, like, why we advocate to not use functioning labels and why we
Hmm.
don't like puzzle pieces, and what's
Hmm.
the deal with identity first language, ABA, and self-diagnosis and things like that. But then there's also like categorized into stuff like, here's my stories, some educational webinars. There was one, it's probably been 2 years ago now,
Hmm.
called Understanding Autism Through the Actually Autistic Lens.
And like I said, I have always valued and appreciated your perspective because you're an excellent writer. You explain things so well. And I always value people that have a perspective that might have been different from mine, but helps me see things in another way. I always really value that. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Village Vision podcast. I hope you found inspiration and valuable insights from our conversation today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, leave a review, and share. But thank you. Thank you for being a part of the Village Vision podcast. Take care, and let's keep shining a light on the power of community, collaboration, and care.